Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. And tonight we're joined by Associate Editor at the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine. Good evening to you both. We'll be with you in just a moment, but first let's have a look at what's on some of those front pages. Their last hope. The Daily Star reports that there's just hours left to find the missing Titanic submersible as oxygen supply dwindles. Rescuers have promised not to give up hope of saving the 5 people on board the vessel. That story on the front page of the Metro too. The Daily Express reports saving the 5 people on board rests with a rescue robot being sent to the scene of the search. The Financial Times reports that the Bank of England is under pressure to raise interest rates by as much as half a percentage point because of stubbornly high inflation. The expected rate rise is sparking fears of a recession. That's the front cover of the Eye. Tories turn on bank over rates crisis. That headline leads the Daily Mail tomorrow. The Daily Telegraph reports lung cancer tests will be offered to every ex-smoker to try and boost survival rates. Security guards on a Kenyan apple farm that supplies British supermarkets have been accused of brutally assaulting and killing people suspected of trespassing on the property. That exclusive story on the front of tomorrow's Guardian. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you're watching us. And we're joined tonight by Kevin Maguire and Sarah Vine. Great to see you both. Thanks so much for joining us. And certainly inflation and interest rates are very much dominating many of the front pages. Sarah, to you first, if I may. Let's look at the front page of the Financial Times. Stubborn inflation piles pressure on Bank of England to take tough action is their headline. I mean, we've been talking about sticky inflation, haven't we? But it really does seem like it's stuck.
Very stuck. And of course, Rishi wants to get it down to 3% by the end of the year, which is looking increasingly unlikely, I suppose. But the main issue for most people will be interest rates because, we're a nation of homeowners and a lot of people, will have borrowed because interest rates have been artificially low for so long. They probably borrowed more than they can really afford. And bought houses that were in themselves inflated in price because of the low interest rates. So it's a sort of pincer movement. It's a real horror show for homeowners. And it's a really difficult situation for the Conservative Party because they are the party of home ownership. That's their traditional space in the sort of political spectrum. If you start to mess with people's houses, for most people, their home is their nest egg. It's the only real chance they have of ever really making any money, saving anything. And now you're just undermining all of that. So Rishi's in a very difficult position. He's been very clear. He's going to keep trying to get these rates, this inflation down, and that is going to have to mean more interest rate rises.
Yeah, it certainly feels that that's what we're looking at tomorrow, Kevin. I mean, it's almost guaranteed, isn't it, that the Bank of England is going to raise interest rates again tomorrow. The question is, by how much?
No, absolutely. The decision will have been taken. They'll have had an early sight of the inflation data, made their decision. And I think it's noon tomorrow we'll get the bad news. And of course, the FT is talking about a 0.5% rise. Rises used to be, 0.25, but going up 0.5%, that would be to 5%. December 2021, that's just 19 months ago, the rate was 0.1%. So it's absolutely shot up. And as Sarah says, it's crucifying people with mortgages who have to remortgage. Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's Questions had a very effective attack on Sunak by talking about a £2,900 Tory mortgage penalty. That's the average figure the resolution believes families will have to pay, households will have to pay extra. And he promised to get inflation down, and it's stuck at 8.7%. When I saw the figure this morning, I thought, am I reading this correctly? Because it was forecast to fall, but it's been forecast to fall before, and it's actually gone up. This time it didn't fall. So yes, it's a huge political problem now for the UK Conservative government, but more importantly, it is a massive financial headache for millions of families.
Yeah, absolutely. The front page of the Eye, Sarah, certainly is predicting the possibility of a recession. Mortgage pain deepens as new rate rise sparks recession fears, talking about how the base rate may now hit 6% next year. And certainly this is just going to mean a lot of pain for homeowners. 400,000 people are going to have to renew their mortgages between July and September.
And also you've got people who will have paid very high prices for their houses, and the market, and of course the housing market will, I mean, some people are saying that it could drop by as much as 30% in some places. So, you know, you could be sitting on a house. This is just brings back memories of the 90s, you know, that is disastrous, very high interest rates and negative equity and people having their homes repossessed. Only in a funny kind of a way, it's worse now, because back then we hadn't had this long period of very low interest rates, which had artificially inflated the housing market and made people stretch themselves beyond their natural capacity to buy. And we've also got another problem, which is the rental market is very, very expensive at the moment. So people could be coming out of their homes and not being able to afford to rent. Plus, the interest rates are, of course, affecting the people who have bought houses on buy-to-let mortgages. They will start selling up, and that will cause problems for tenants. So it's not just a financial problem; it's a sort of home problem. It's a home. I mean, we don't have enough homes in Britain as it is, and you know, places to rent and places to buy are too expensive. That could get a lot worse.
Yeah, Kevin, you hear older homeowners talking about that period that Sarah was referencing there, where interest rates went into double digits and people were panicking overnight at how they were going to be able to afford their mortgages. Obviously, we're not seeing the same level of interest rates, but people are more exposed these days in terms of how much they borrowed. Just how do you think that could play out for people this year?
Yeah, I remember them going up from 8 to 15% very rapidly. And I'd got a fixed rate of 8.8%, which I managed to see it through. I was lucky, but I remember people having to take in lodgers. But people just didn't have any other life because all they could do was pay their mortgage. But at the time, the ratio between your wages and your mortgage was a lot lower. Now, because house prices have been inflated for so long and have risen so quickly, people have got much bigger mortgages, so they'll be hit even harder. Although it won't be 15%, you get 5 and 6%. That will proportionately be much harder on them. There'll be some people sitting on paid off their mortgages. They may, you know, be able to ride it out. Their asset will just possibly go down a little bit, but there are just people. Some people have to sell and downsize in a crisis, so they won't get a good price. Other people are just going to see their family finances absolutely wrecked. They won't be able to eat out, buy clothes, go to events, holiday, get new cars, and that is where the eye pick up on this threat of recession, because the government says high inflation is a big threat to your living standards. Absolutely is. But at the same time, if the way to cure inflation is to actually attack your living standards in another direction by pushing up not just the cost of your mortgage, but anything you've got on a credit card or anything else you've borrowed, maybe bought that car, then you're going to get hammered in another direction. And of course, the big push for inflation came from exterior forces, Putin's invasion of Ukraine, sending oil and gas prices soaring, which fed through into food too. And Britain has got a particular problem because we import so much. So we got higher inflation than the other G7 major economies. But if the way of getting that inflation down, which has been pushed up mainly by external factors, is to hammer you at home with interest rates, then it just seems crazy. People are going to get slapped from two different directions, and the economy can be crashed. Not much of a cure, is it, if you're going to crash the economy?
And certainly, Sarah, that lever that we're going to see the Bank of England probably pulling again tomorrow in terms of raising interest rates just doesn't seem to be working. And this argument that it's a global problem doesn't really necessarily ring true anymore when you look at inflation here in the UK, which appears stuck at more than 8%. And then you look elsewhere, China, where it's virtually non-existent. The US is at 4%, Europe at 6%. And certainly the front page of your paper tomorrow is looking at the fact that some Tories are turning on the Bank of England over this crisis.
Yes, well, of course, now the blame game starts. And, you know, the Conservatives are blaming Bank of England. Keir Starmer is obviously going to make a lot of hay with this, and politically it makes perfect sense for him to do so. Although I'm not sure that Labour has any particular alternative. It's going to be one of those situations where everyone just blames everybody else. Meanwhile, ordinary people suffer. And also the other thing to say is that I suppose back then in the 90s, people had more savings because, as Kevin was saying, you know, cost of living was lower, you could put more money away, you were paying a smaller proportion of your salary towards your living costs. Now people live on debt, you know, and you know they borrow a lot of. Everybody has borrowed far too much in the last sort of 10 or 20 years, and so people don't have much of a cushion. And I think that's really going to hit. It's going to cost the Conservatives very dear electorally, I think.
Yeah, certainly. It's going to potentially be costly for them politically, but people are far more worried about how much it's going to cost them financially. The front page of The Guardian, Kevin, is looking at Labour's calls for mortgage support, but certainly that's something the government has ruled out. They're not going to offer financial intervention for mortgage holders because they say it'll be inflationary.
No, absolutely, and expensive, they say. But Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Treasury Secretary, Labour's Chancellor in waiting, really, is calling for help. One of the proposals is to extend mortgage repayment periods. Well, that works if you're paying largely capital off. But if you're in the early part of your mortgage, almost all the money you go, say you've got a 25-year mortgage, goes on interest. And you can pay a lot each month, and all you really actually buy is a couple of bricks. I remember watching my own mortgage fall very, very slowly at the start because most of the money was on the interest and it wasn't on the capital. So this can only bail you out to some extent, and only some people. I mean, the truth is there is no easy answer. The Met Road pick up on renters. Two, it's not just people with mortgages. 21 months, the rents increases have outstripped inflation generally, and they reckon now, if you're outside London, the average renter, we mustn't forget, you know, the government is in serious trouble when it's got homeowners or home buyers and it's got renters both coming at it. Outside of London, the average rent now is £1,136 a month. And in London, more than £2,000. More than £2,000 is £24,000 a year. That's £24,000 cash. That's after tax and national insurance. So you'd be talking around getting on for £30,000 a year. You would have to be earning gross just to pay your rent. So, you know, Labour, I suppose, and the Liberal Democrats and others in opposition have got proposals, but I'm not sure they will fundamentally address a problem, which is rents are far too high. And now people are going to be absolutely crucified by rising mortgages.
Yeah, it is certainly such a worrying time for so many people. Kevin, Sarah, thanks so much. We'll see you again in just a sec. More of the front pages coming up after this break, including this front page of the Telegraph. Titanic sub-operator too slow to raise the alarm. Certainly time is running out in that rescue operation. We'll be talking about that after this short break. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview on Sky News. It's good to have you with us. And with me this evening is the associate editor at the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail columnist, Sarah Vine. And of course, the other big story on so many of the front pages, once again tomorrow, Kevin, is this missing submersible with 5 people on board, missing since Sunday, and certainly time is running out.
No, absolutely. With the oxygen, as you were saying, some papers say 11, others say 12 noon. Sounds are being picked up, but they don't even know where it is. Never mind trying to get it up. So while you always hope for the best, I think now it's a case of fearing the worst, and there'll be lots of questions asked. I have picked up. I was slightly surprised, but some people are not too sympathetic to the group, believing they spent a lot of money on tourism and it was incredibly dangerous and they should have gone. And there are other arguments about why do these 5 get so much coverage and other bigger disasters, possibly including 750 people on a ship in the Mediterranean that went down. Why don't they get as much coverage? But you just kind of see the drama of it, but you also the heartbreak of the families knowing that these 5 people are trapped in this fight against time that isn't on their side.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't really bear thinking about, but it certainly has captured the attention of the world, Sarah. And I was speaking to someone earlier who was on for an interview who used to be in the US Navy, and he said that even if the worst case scenario is if they found them at this stage on the seabed, they don't actually have the equipment yet in place to pull them up. And certainly there's already criticism in the Telegraph in an article on it, page 1 tomorrow, that they were too slow to raise the alarm here in this rescue operation.
Yes, I mean, the thing is, even if they, as you say, even if they get to them, because the thing is sealed with 17 bolts or something, they can't even get more oxygen in. And of course, they can't raise them up quick enough to open it up. So it's a very sad and difficult situation. It's an odd thing. I can't understand why anybody would want to do something like that, let alone spend £250,000 doing it. But we've sent fewer people to the bottom of the ocean than we have into outer space. It's a very, very hostile environment, and there have been concerns raised about this operation before. I think the reason it's captured the imagination so much is because it is a race against time, isn't it, to try and get them out. And of course, the Titanic is a sort of eternally fascinating sea wreck. But I just, it seems very sad. I feel terrible for their families.
Yeah, absolutely. But certainly the message is loud and clear. They are not giving up hope at this stage. For as long as there is time left, then there's hope. But it's estimated there could be as little as 14 hours of oxygen left. It doesn't bear thinking about. Kevin, Sarah, thanks so much. We'll see you again next hour.